In the last video, we talked about what cortisol actually does to your body. And if you watched it, there's a good chance some things started clicking into place for you. The belly fat, the sleep issues, the brain fog, the feeling of being wired and exhausted at the same time. That's cortisol doing exactly what it's designed to do in a body that never gets a break from stress. So now the question is, what do you actually do about it? That's what this video is about. It's not a list of things to add to your already full plate, but a real look at what actually moves the needle when it comes to supporting healthy cortisol rhythm across your sleep, your movement, your nutrition, and the way you think and respond to the stress that's always going to be there. Because the goal isn't to eliminate stress, it's to build a body that handles it better. Before we get into strategies, I want to set something straight because there's a lot of noise out there about cortisol, and a lot of it isn't helpful. You've probably seen the supplements, the detox protocols, the 5-minute morning routines that promise to balance your hormones by the end of the week. And while some of those things do have merit in the right context, the reason most of them don't stick is that they're treating cortisol like a switch you can flip, when it's really more like a thermostat. Your cortisol rhythm is a system, and it's been calibrated over years by your sleep patterns, your stress load, your movement habits, your nervous system history, and you can absolutely shift it. And the strategies we're going to talk about today are genuinely effective, but they work by gradually resetting that thermostat, not by hacking it overnight. That framing matters because it changes how you approach this. Instead of looking for the one thing that's going to fix everything, you're going to start looking for the combination of small, consistent inputs that are going to add up over time. And that's actually good news because it means that this is something that you have real influence over every single day. If there's one area that has the most direct and immediate impact on cortisol, it's sleep. Not that you don't already know that sleep matters, I know you do, but because most women don't realize how bidirectional that relationship is. Poor sleep raises cortisol, and elevated cortisol disrupts sleep. Once you're in that cycle, it can feel nearly impossible to break. The most important thing you can do for your cortisol rhythm through sleep isn't actually about how many hours you get. It's about consistency. Your body sets cortisol output based on your circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm is anchored almost entirely by light and timing. When you go to bed and wake up at wildly different times, even on the weekends, you're essentially giving your nervous system a moving target. It cannot calibrate properly. Waking up at the same time every morning, including weekends, is one of the highest leverage things you can do. It sounds almost too simple, but it directly stabilizes the cortisol awakening response, the natural spike that happens in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, which is what gives you energy and mental clarity in the morning. Getting natural light within the first hour of waking also reinforces this. Light is the primary signal that tells your brain it's morning, which helps anchor your cortisol curve to the right time of day, higher when you need it and lower when you're winding down at night. And on the wind down side, lowering light exposure in the evening, particularly blue light from screens, signals your brain to start suppressing cortisol and ramping up melatonin. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Even dimming your environment and stepping away from the screen 30 to 60 minutes before bed can make a measurable difference. Movement is also a very powerful tool for cortisol regulation, and also one of the most misunderstood, especially in midlife. So here's what most women get wrong. They push harder when they're stressed because exercise feels productive, and it is. But the type and intensity of exercise matters enormously when cortisol is already elevated. High-intensity exercise is itself a cortisol trigger. Your body treats intense physical effort as a stressor, A beneficial one when you're recovered and resilient. But when you're already running on chronically elevated cortisol baseline, piling on more high-intensity work can push your system further into dysregulation rather than helping it recover. This is often why women in perimenopause notice that the harder they train, the worse they feel, the harder it becomes to lose weight, and the longer their recovery takes. That doesn't mean stop training hard entirely. It means that balance matters. Strength training done at a sustainable intensity is excellent. It improves insulin sensitivity, supports muscle mass, and creates a healthy hormonal response over time. But it needs to be balanced with lower intensity movement that actively supports recovery. Walking is genuinely one of the best cortisol lowering tools available. Not because it's easy, but because steady, low intensity movement activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side, which is the direct counterpart to the stress response. So 20 to 30 minutes of walking, especially outdoors, has measurable effects on cortisol levels. It's not a consolation prize for not doing a harder workout. It's a different and specific intervention. The goal is a movement practice that challenges you enough to build strength and resilience, and it also includes enough lower intensity activity to give your nervous system room to recover. What you eat doesn't directly cause high cortisol, but it absolutely influences how your body manages it. And there's a few key areas worth paying attention to. Blood sugar stability is probably the most important. When your blood sugar drops, your body releases cortisol to bring it back up. It's one of cortisol's core functions. So if you're skipping meals, going long stretches without eating, or relying heavily on refined carbohydrates that spike and crash your blood sugar, you are essentially triggering cortisol responses multiple times a day that have nothing to do with psychological stress. Eating regular meals that include protein, healthy fat, and fiber helps keep blood sugar stable and reduces that unnecessary cortisol burden. This is especially important at breakfast. Breaking your fast with a protein-forward meal rather than something high in sugar sets a much steadier metabolic tone for the rest of the day. Caffeine is also worth mentioning here too. And I'm not going to tell you to give up your coffee, but you do need to understand what it's doing. Caffeine stimulates cortisol release, which is part of why it works. The timing matters more than the amount. Waiting 60 to 90 minutes after waking before having your first cup of coffee allows your natural cortisol awakening response to complete on its own, which actually gives you more sustained energy through the morning rather than a spike and a crash. Having caffeine late in the day keeps cortisol elevated when it should be declining, which feeds directly back into the sleep issues that we talked about earlier. From a micronutrient standpoint, magnesium also deserves a mention. It's directly tied to cortisol, and it's one of the most common deficiencies in midlife women. And it does play a direct role in regulating the stress response. Low magnesium is associated with higher cortisol reactivity, meaning your body responds more strongly to stressors when magnesium is low. Getting magnesium through food such as leafy greens, nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, or through supplementation is a simple and well-supported strategy. The last piece is the one that tends to get either overcomplicated or dismissed entirely, and I want to address this plainly. Your nervous system is not just responding to external events. It's responding to how you interpret those events. Two people can experience the same stressor and have completely different cortisol responses based on how their nervous system has learned to process the threat. This isn't about positive thinking. It's about perception and neurophysiology. Chronic stress over time sensitizes your HPA axis. Your nervous system learns to fire faster and recover more slowly. The good news is that the same way that it can be sensitized, it can also be recalibrated through consistent, repetitive inputs that signal safety. Practices like slow, diaphragmatic breathing where the exhale is longer than the inhale, directly activate the vagus nerve and shift your nervous system toward the parasympathetic state. This is not a metaphor. It's a measurable physiological mechanism. Even 5 minutes of deliberate, slow breathing can lower cortisol acutely. The other piece that's often underestimated is how much of your relationship with your own schedule and expectations drives cortisol. The sense of being constantly behind, constantly needed, never quite finished, that low-grade urgency that most high-achieving women live with is a cortisol driver just as real as any external stressor. Learning to build recovery into your day intentionally, not as a reward for finishing everything, but as a non-negotiable input that your nervous system requires. It's one of the most profound shifts that you can make. And that's something we're going to go much deeper into on the next video because it's a topic that deserves its own conversation entirely. Cortisol doesn't have to be the thing that runs your body into the ground. When you understand it and give your system the right inputs consistently, through sleep, through movement, through how you fuel yourself and how you respond to stress, your body is genuinely capable of finding a new baseline. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And it starts with understanding that the way that you've been feeling, not only is it not your fault, it's also not permanent. If this video has been helpful to you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. We're shifting into a topic that I think is going to challenge some assumptions about rest, about productivity, and about what it actually means to take care of yourself in this season of life. I'll see you in the next one.